The moment you realize that your entire life can change begins with a simple yet powerful step: putting yourself first. This decision, though sometimes difficult, can become the pivotal moment that fundamentally changes your reality. But what does it mean to put yourself first? It isn't selfishness, nor is it abandoning care for others. It's the recognition of your own worth, your need for love, care, and inner healing. And although many might think that self-care is secondary, it is, in fact, the very foundation for genuine emotional and psychological harmony. When you begin to pay attention to yourself, when you prioritize addressing your own needs, emotional energy starts to flow freely, without barriers. Healing becomes a natural process, and you cease to feel resistance on your path. Emotions that were previously suppressed are released. You become more open to new possibilities. Sincerity appears in your relationships, and life becomes filled with meaning. This isn't magic. It's an internal process that you yourself can initiate. Today, we'll talk about how exactly this path to healing begins with choosing yourself, and how, ultimately, this decision transforms your life. Many of us, throughout our lives, encounter numerous expectations and obligations. We live in a world where caring for others, helping others, and providing support become the core principles instilled in us from childhood. In this context, the question often arises: when was the last time I put myself first? How often do we forget that to be useful to others, we first need to take care of our own emotional, physical, and mental state? We learn to live for others, forgetting our own needs and desires. It so happens that we often sideline our emotions, our lives, and our dreams. We try to please those around us, to be good daughters, sons, partners, friends, and colleagues, unknowingly ignoring our own needs. We begin to lose ourselves. We start experiencing an inner void, fatigue, apathy, and even disappointment in our own lives. Seemingly, everything around us is functioning, but inside, something is happening that we can't explain. This isn't just dissatisfaction, it's a deep sense of loss, as if something important has been lost. But what exactly? In reality, this feeling arises when we don't put ourselves first, when we disregard our own desires and needs. With each passing day, we become increasingly distant from our inner truth, trying to meet the expectations of other people. This is the beginning of emotional burnout, when we ignore our own desires for so long that at some point we simply cannot find the strength within ourselves to move forward. Many believe that taking care of oneself is selfish. We fear that if we start paying attention to our own needs, we will appear self-absorbed or even cold. However, true self-care is not selfishness at all. It is an act of love and respect for oneself. It's the realization that in order to be happy and healthy, we must first care for ourselves. We must be honest with ourselves and acknowledge that we have the right to rest, happiness, love, and support. When we learn to put ourselves first, it doesn't mean we become less caring or less attentive to others. On the contrary, it means we start caring for ourselves with the same attention and respect with which we care for those we love. This allows us to restore our energy and give more to the world than we otherwise could. Only when we pay attention to our own needs and emotions can we truly help others. Putting yourself first primarily means learning to listen to yourself, your feelings, and your desires. It's the opportunity to understand what you need to be in harmony with yourself, what helps you feel happy and healthy. For example, it could be the simple decision to say no when you feel overwhelmed, or conversely, deciding to do something that brings you joy and satisfaction. It could be rest, time for yourself, engaging in activities that inspire you, or even just acknowledging that you deserve love and care. Often, we think that if we start taking care of ourselves, it will take away time we could spend on others. But in reality, as soon as we learn to prioritize self-care, it will bring joy and satisfaction, not only to us, but also to those around us. We begin to be more attentive and supportive because we find inner harmony and balance. Selflessness and caring for others are important qualities, but they should not come at the expense of our inner well-being. If we constantly place the needs of others above our own, we risk losing ourselves. We lose our inner strength, our individuality, our uniqueness. And it is precisely at this moment that we begin to feel that something is wrong, that our life has lost its meaning. However, when we start prioritizing self-care, when we realize that our inner world is just as important as the external one, we regain strength and inspiration. This doesn't mean we become selfish. It means we have finally recognized our worth and our right to happiness. And it is from this moment that true healing begins, both physical and emotional. We start to see changes happening in our lives. Relationships become more sincere, and the inner world fills with peace and joy. The path to emotional healing begins with giving yourself permission to be yourself, allowing yourself the opportunity to be vibrant, joyful, and healthy. When we put ourselves first, we stop being hostages to others' expectations and start living for ourselves. This will not only open the doors to inner harmony, but also allow us to create deeper and more sincere relationships with those around us. When we begin to take care of ourselves, we encounter an important stage, accepting our true nature. This means we stop suppressing our desires, our feelings, and perhaps even our weaknesses. Initially, this might seem difficult because we are accustomed to playing roles that other people expect of us. We are used to following the expectations of society, family, friends, colleagues, and even partners, not always asking ourselves what we specifically need. But as soon as we start realizing that it's important not only to please others, but also to respect our own needs, the path to true healing opens before us. Self-acceptance includes acknowledging our feelings, no matter how complex or uncomfortable they may be. We often try to suppress emotions that seem negative or undesirable to us, such as anger, fear, or sadness. However, suppressing these emotions leads to the accumulation of internal tension, which ultimately blocks the natural flow of energy and prevents us from moving forward. True healing begins with allowing ourselves to experience these emotions and being honest with ourselves. This doesn't mean we must constantly dwell in negativity, but it's important to understand that all emotions are part of our experience, and we have every right to feel them. When we start accepting our vulnerability and weaknesses, we open up space for growth. This can be a painful process, but it is precisely through accepting these aspects of ourselves that we become more whole. It frees us from the feelings of shame or guilt that often arise when we don't meet the ideals imposed by society. Self-acceptance helps us learn to love ourselves as we are, without needing to hide or change our genuine feelings and experiences. Furthermore, it's crucial to realize that self-care isn't just about physical upkeep, but also about working with our inner world. Internal changes require time, and it's important to approach ourselves with patience and respect. This process doesn't happen overnight, and it won't always be easy. But it is through this process that we become stronger and more confident in our abilities. When we begin to accept ourselves, we stop seeking approval and validation from external sources. We are no longer dependent on the opinions of others, because our worth is determined not by external factors, but by how we perceive ourselves from within. It's important to understand that self-care and self-acceptance do not mean avoiding difficult emotions or situations. Rather, it's an opportunity to learn how to cope with these emotions in a healthy way, not by blocking or suppressing them, but by channeling them constructively. For example, when you experience anger or frustration, it's not a reason to hide your feelings, but an opportunity to understand what exactly triggers such emotions and how you can deal with them constructively. When we begin to understand our emotions, we become more mindful and ready for the internal changes that open the path to healing. Moreover, self-acceptance includes the ability to acknowledge our mistakes and shortcomings. This is a vital step on the path to healing, because when we recognize our weaknesses and imperfections, we free ourselves from the burden of self-judgment. Instead of blaming ourselves, we begin to treat our mistakes as lessons that help us become better. This is a key moment in the process of self-development, because by freeing ourselves from negative evaluations, we start seeing the world from a clearer and calmer perspective. Self-acceptance and self-care also mean that we stop comparing ourselves to others. When we put ourselves first, we begin to understand that our value does not depend on how we appear in the eyes of others. We realize that every person is unique and that each of our paths is personal and inimitable. Therefore, by taking care of ourselves, we stop seeking external approval and start listening to our inner voice. We stop evaluating ourselves by others' standards and begin to embrace our own. When we accept ourselves as we are, we open up space for true freedom. This allows us to be sincere, honest, and open in our relationships with others. We start feeling more confident in who we are, and our internal state becomes more harmonious. This doesn't mean we stop developing or striving for improvement. On the contrary, self-acceptance helps us grow with love and respect for ourselves. Once we learn to love and accept ourselves, our inner world begins to change. We become more peaceful, confident, and happy individuals. We stop looking for solutions to our problems outside ourselves and start looking within. And it is in this process that true transformation begins, allowing us to live life fully and be the best version of ourselves. When we start putting ourselves first, new horizons open up before us. We cease to be victims of our circumstances and begin to perceive life as an active process in which we play a significant role. But this path is not always easy. It requires honesty, courage, and a willingness to reconsider old beliefs and behavioral patterns. One such crucial step on the path to healing is the ability to say no and establish boundaries that will protect our personal value and inner world. Many of us are taught from childhood that saying no is not only impolite, but also selfish. We grow up with the idea that we must always please others, help everyone, and always be at our best. But when we try to please everyone, we forget about ourselves. We start overloading ourselves with tasks, losing our identity, and suffering from stress and fatigue. This is the moment when we stop being ourselves and start adapting to others' expectations. Thus, self-care involves not only rest and attention to our needs, but also the ability to set boundaries that help us maintain our inner harmony. Setting boundaries is an act of self-love. It means we understand that we have the right to choose who we spend time with, which tasks we are willing to invest our energy in, and which relationships we maintain. Without these boundaries, we risk becoming victims of others' expectations and demands. And however selfish it might seem, establishing boundaries is actually central to our inner healing. We begin to understand that our time and energy are valuable resources that need to be protected, Every time we say no, we give ourselves the opportunity to preserve our mental and physical integrity. This also requires us to recognize that not everyone in our lives is meant to be with us always. Sometimes, relationships can be toxic, drain our resources, and make us unhappy. The ability to let go of such people is also part of the healing process. This doesn't mean we must completely exclude everyone who was once important to us, but it does mean we must stop allowing other people to dictate how we live. We have the right to surround ourselves with those who support us, who bring positivity into our lives. This doesn't imply we should become isolated from everyone, but it's important to understand that self-care also includes choosing people who bring peace and joy to our inner world. Establishing healthy boundaries also involves learning to balance personal life and work. We often sacrifice our time for work or other obligations, forgetting that our personal life, rest, and recovery are just as important as professional achievements. Learning to separate personal time from work time is a vital step towards inner healing. We cannot be effective if we constantly deplete our energy, trying to please everyone and do everything perfectly. Sometimes it's worth simply stopping, taking a breath, and telling ourselves, "I deserve peace and rest." This gives us the chance to restore our strength and return to life with renewed energy and vitality. When we start setting boundaries, we also learn to relate more consciously to our emotions and desires. We no longer fear expressing what we feel and openly talking about our needs. We stop hiding our desires for fear of being misunderstood or judged. Instead, we begin to value our uniqueness and the right to our own opinion. This frees us from the guilt we often feel when we decide to put ourselves first. We start to understand that our feelings and experiences are important, and we have the right to express them. Self-care and setting boundaries help us understand the importance of listening to ourselves and our needs. This isn't just about external actions like physical rest or temporarily distancing ourselves from others, but also an internal awareness that we deserve respect and love. The ability to say no and set boundaries is a crucial step in building healthy and harmonious relationships with ourselves and others. It also means we begin to approach our lives more responsibly, respecting both our own and others' needs. This process helps us become more confident in ourselves and our abilities. We stop being dependent on the opinions of others and instead start relying on our own feelings and intuition. This restores our sense of inner strength and integrity. We understand that we can control our lives by setting boundaries that support our emotional and mental harmony. This is the path to healing that begins with love and respect for oneself. The path to self-acceptance and emotional healing is often accompanied by inner struggles and doubts. We begin to notice that our old way of life and thinking starts to crumble. But it is precisely in this process that we encounter the most important and profound changes. This is the moment when we rethink our priorities, revise our goals, and begin to make choices in favor of ourselves. It can be painful, but within it lies immense power, the power of liberation from old limitations and patterns. We begin to understand that our life is not just about fulfilling obligations, but also about deep self-expression and inner growth. When we decide to put ourselves first, the need arises to redefine what is important to us. We can no longer be the people who live by others' rules and follow imposed standards. This is a process of freeing ourselves from the fear of being different, from the fear of losing approval or failing to please others. This path requires courage because we start letting go of what does not align with our true selves. We refuse to live a life where others' expectations are forced upon us and begin building our own reality. The process of restructuring our thinking and values often meets resistance, both from the external world and from within ourselves. We begin to doubt the correctness of our decisions, worry about not being understood or being judged. But this is exactly where true healing begins. It's the moment when we start accepting our vulnerability and learning to be honest with ourselves. We realize we cannot be strong if we continue to hide our weaknesses. On the contrary, it is through acknowledging our weaknesses and imperfections that we gain the strength for change. When we start living in accordance with ourselves, a completely new world of possibilities unfolds before us. We stop wasting our energy maintaining facades and roles that others expect from us. We begin to build our lives based on our own desires, not on what external reality dictates. This is very liberating. We no longer need to justify ourselves to others or try to be someone we are not. We become honest with ourselves and the world, and this gives us confidence. Another important step on the path to healing is self-forgiveness. We often carry the heavy burden of regrets, resentments, and past mistakes. We cannot move forward until we learn to let go of these burdens. Self-forgiveness is a process that begins with accepting that we are imperfect. We cannot change the past, but we can change how we relate to it. Forgiving ourselves frees us from the feelings of guilt and shame that often prevent us from moving forward. When we forgive ourselves, we create space for new opportunities and growth. Self-forgiveness also involves accepting our mistakes as part of the learning and growth process. This is a crucial moment in our healing because we start viewing our failures not as defeats, but as lessons that have helped us become more mature and wiser. This allows us to let go of the fear of failure and start moving forward with confidence. We understand that our worth does not depend on our mistakes or shortcomings, but on how we treat ourselves and the process of change. When we begin to forgive ourselves and let go of past grievances, we free ourselves for the present and the future. This allows us to be more open and receptive to the new opportunities that life offers us. We understand that every day is a chance to become better, that we can start anew, regardless of any mistakes we made before. Self-forgiveness is the path to true healing that allows us to move forward with ease and confidence. An important aspect of this journey is recognizing that we don't always need to be in perfect shape to be worthy of love and respect. We shouldn't constantly strive for perfection to feel valuable. On the contrary, self-acceptance and self-love include acknowledging that we are worthy of love and respect, despite our flaws and imperfections. When we stop striving for an ideal, we begin to accept ourselves as we are, and this helps us to be happier and more fulfilled in our lives. The path of self-acceptance is a process that requires time, patience, and honesty with oneself. But it is precisely in this process that we find our true strength and capacity for change. When we put ourselves first, we begin to see the world anew. We start to realize that we have the right to be happy, that we deserve love and respect. This deep realization frees us and opens the way to true healing. The journey towards healing and self-acceptance is a challenging but incredibly important process. When we start putting ourselves first, we open up endless possibilities for growth and transformation before us. This isn't just about physical rest or self-care, but about a deep internal process of accepting our strengths and weaknesses, our needs and boundaries. We begin to understand that true strength lies not in pleasing everyone, but in being true to ourselves and living in accordance with our authentic values. If you felt that this message resonated within your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos filled with valuable insights and inspiration. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video and share it with friends. Perhaps it will help someone else on their path to self-acceptance and inner healing. Your likes and subscriptions help the channel grow, and this motivates me to create even more content for you. Thank you for being with us. See you in the next video.